I was 15 years old. My mum had been unwell for, I thought it was several years, but it turns out that it was only about a year. And it's
Wow.
weird how grief sort of distorts time like
Oh, yeah.
but she died when I was 15. Then at the age of 21, my sister gave birth to twins at 15 weeks premature. And sadly, my nephew died at 5 days old. More recent years, I guess, I have navigated recurrent miscarriage, infertility, and now I have a 1-year-old son whom I love dearly. However, it was a massive shift, and anybody who is a parent will know there is a bit of a grieving process there as well.
1,000%.
No one talks about. And so I was diagnosed with postnatal depression, and I've just come off my meds and I'm sort of weaning out of that, but you know, it's still there as grief intertwines, all of these other things intertwine too.
Welcome to the Life with Grief podcast. I'm your host, grief and soul purpose coach and fellow griever, Tara Accardo. Katrina, welcome to the Life with Grief podcast. I am so excited to have you here. As we were just saying before we hopped on, I feel like this is so serendipitous. And I was telling you that when I first got into this grief space, I don't really know what you call it, but when I first started my Instagram account and getting into this work, your account and just you were one of the first I saw and started following and all the things. And I just love you because so much of what you post and talk about, it is just so raw and real, and it really resonated with me. It's one of the things that, again, just like drew me to you. So, but you have been through so much, and probably even more from when I originally first started following you. So I want to let you tell your story, but I first want to just say welcome. I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. And as I said, it's so nice to hear that, and to hear that you've been around since like the days when I was like dancing in front of the camera and
Yes.
doing all of those funny things. I miss those days of like social
Yeah.
media where I could just dance. But it's lovely because I've also been following you. So it's nice that we have sort of this like silent connection where maybe we've been
Yeah.
around but not really talking. It's nice.
Yes.
But yeah, so for, I guess, I'll keep it brief because as we said, there's quite a lot of loss that I've experienced over the last sort of 30
Mhm.
years of my life, which is a weird thing to say now.
I was gonna say just over the 3 decades of my life.
Over
It's
the
fine.
3 decades.
Through a few
Too
things.
much, just a bit. And so I guess my first experience of grief for me was when my mum died. So I was 15 years old. My mum had been unwell for, I thought it was several years, but it turns
Mhm.
out that it was only about a year. And it's
Wow.
weird how grief sort of distorts time like.
Oh, yeah.
But she died when I was 15, and so navigating, you know, teenage years, hormones, trying to fit in, that was a whole thing. Then at the age of 21, my sister gave birth to twins at 15 weeks premature, and
Oh,
sadly, my nephew died at 5 days old. My niece, however, is now 9, which is like crazy. But
wow.
you know, to see that from another's perspective, and the grief and the loss and the duality there, that's
Yeah.
what really sort of propelled me into wanting to do this work and talk about it.
Mhm.
In more recent years, I guess, I have navigated recurrent miscarriage, infertility, and now I have a 1-year-old son whom I love dearly. However, it was a massive shift, and anybody who is a parent will know there is a bit of a grieving process there as well.
1,000%.
No one talks about. Everyone says it's going to be like the best time of your life, you're going to fall in love, and it's actually really hard.
Yeah.
Um,
That's putting it so mildly. Oh my
yeah,
god, yeah.
it's so hard. And so I was diagnosed with postnatal depression, and I've just come off my meds and I'm sort of weaning out of that, but you know, it's still there as grief intertwines, all of these other things intertwine too. And
Mhm.
so that is my life in a snapshot of, there's been a bit of grief, but you know, I love to showcase, for me, it's showcasing that grief doesn't mean that you're just this sad person that's sat in a corner crying all the
Yeah.
time.
Like, it doesn't have to become your whole personality kind of
It
thing,
doesn't.
even though it totally could.
I thought it did. I thought that like I had to be this grief person and that's all I was.
Yeah.
But actually, like, there's so much more to me, and I can be
Mhm.
like bubbly and colourful and still talk about death.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to this podcast. So we do. No, it's so true. And I think that's so beautiful what you just said. And a lot of that definitely It comes with time, it comes with processing. You'll never hear me say, like, "Time heals all wounds." I was that girl once upon a time. And then my parents died, and I was like, "F that." That's
Yeah,
not true.
we were
It's
all
it's
there at one point. We all said that at one point.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's valid. I understand why, and there is absolutely time has a lot to do with it, but it is so it's like, that expression where it's just like, I'm gonna, like, misinterpret it, and I've talked about this on the podcast before, but it's like, in the grand scheme of your life, right, you have, like, your birth and your death date and your whatever, and it's the dash, right, and it's what you do with the dash and everything in there, and there's work that goes into that, right, and it's overwhelming, and all of our life experiences, it's a sum of all of that, it's a sum of our decisions and things that are in our control and not in our control and
Mm,
all the things, and yeah, so I just it's certainly in my grieving journey thus far, it's definitely been, yeah, time itself has certainly helped, but when I look back on everything I have done in these last several years since my parents died and like what that looks like, I'm just like, I think we all need to just take a moment and like be so proud of ourselves because it is a choice waking up every day and just choosing to walk out of our house or do anything, right? And especially as a new parent, I want to get to that. But it's not without a lot of work, and we can't discount that. And so with your story, where I really wanna start actually is with the passing of your mom.
yeah.
And with anything that we talk about today, of course, just tell whatever you are comfortable sharing. I always say that. In terms of your mom, you mentioned she was kind of unwell. You do not have to go into detail or anything about that, but just that is such a pivotal age to lose a parent, let alone a mother, right? Is such a crucial figure in our life. So, can you just walk me through like what that was like for you and that grief? Because I can imagine processing grief at 15 is very different than processing grief in our 30s, right? Which we are. So, yeah, just like walk us through that a little bit.
So different, and I'm only starting to realize that more now as I'm
Mhm.
older and as I can have hindsight, and I
Yeah,
actually don't think that when my mum died, I did process it. I actually think I only started to process her death when I was sort of mid-20s
I hear that
because
so often with
yeah,
people that lose a parent around the age you did. Like, so many people on this podcast have said that. They're just like,
yeah.
"It took a minute."
It
Like
does, and because
yeah.
you're already I think the hormonal thing, the whole societal thing around being a teenager, you're trying to fit in, you're trying to find yourself, and so when
Mhm.
such a big part of who you are is gone and taken away, it starts to make you question everything. And I think as a child, as a teenager, there's this idea like the world is just you, like it's quite egocentric, and that not in a
Mhm.
negative way, but it just is.
It just is.
And when this thing happens that's so out of your control, it it completely shifts you from your whole identity of who you thought you were.
Yeah.
And I feel like I was living in a space for a really long time of I don't know who I am.
Mhm.
Am I just this girl whose mum died when she was a teenager? Am I the girl that I'm not the girl that I was before that happened? But I I just couldn't figure it out. And
Yeah.
it's probably not even until recently, since having my son, that I've even started to learn who I am and lean
Mm.
back into that again. At the time, I very much just sort of switched off from it. And the only time I showed my emotional feelings was at home in the safety with my poor dad, who copped a lot from,
Yeah.
3 kids, who he's gone from, a parent he worked a lot,
Uh-huh.
um, to then being a single parent and having to be at home with these 3 kids and his daughters, like asking for like tampons and like all of these things. And he's like,
Yeah.
what to do with all of this? And
Oh,
it's even just like that adjustment. My friends used to say to me, like, how do you talk to your dad and ask him to get you tampons? Like, don't you feel awkward? I'm like, well, I don't have anyone else to ask.
I don't have
So
a choice.
but,
Someone's
like,
gotta get it
all
for
of
me.
these things, just like my first kiss, it was my dad that I spoke to,
Aw.
like, he had to have the talk with me, like, all of these, like, awkward things that you don't really think about. People don't talk about either,
Yeah,
I think, when they're, like, reliving that time of their life. Um,
absolutely.
so there was a big shift, and it I what I found I was doing, I suppose, is I had this idea of what grief should be. I
Mhm.
thought grief was, deep sadness, crying all the time, as I say, and then after the year, you're over it, you're done. And so when that didn't happen, I felt really uncertain in myself. And I tried to mask a lot of what I was feeling. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, that did lead to, risky behaviors. And it led to often my true emotion coming out after a few drinks as a teenager.
Mhm. Mhm.
It alienated a lot of friends. And it, I, I don't think I did process it as a teen. And I'm not,
Yeah.
I wish I could say I did. And I wish I could give some tips on how I did.
It's so
But I,
common.
yeah. And I think
Yeah.
what would have helped me in that time is actually somebody just actually telling me what grief really is. Because the
Yes.
adults around me were just trying to fix it and they couldn't fix it. And that
Mhm.
was making it worse. So I guess I can't say what I did, but what I can say is if you are supporting somebody who is a child and grieving,
Yeah.
is don't try and fix it for them and just be honest.
Set expectations, yeah, of, like, what we can really expect. I think that and, the 5 stages, I've talked about this multiple times in the podcast and, like, how that has been so misconstrued and just society does not help, let's be real,
It
and
doesn't.
especially whether you're a child, whether you're, an adult and having to go back to work, having to go back to school, right? There's these, like, crazy weird timelines and expectations and things of, like, even if you don't have to be over it by then, like, you have to be functioning again in some capacity, and people are just assuming that you're just gonna figure it out, which we all, I guess, do have to, but with what support, with what, like, who is telling us, and hopefully that's why these conversations are getting out there and we are telling people it's okay. This is not the prescription for grief that we all, like, have known and come to accept is not accurate.
No,
If we don't have that and we're not hearing that, oh my god, recipe for, like,
disaster.
chaos, emotional dysregulation, and all the things,
It
and our
is.
grief kinda coming out sideways as it did for you and for so many of us, so,
Yeah, and
yeah.
there's this. I hate the idea of like when people say children are resilient because
Oh,
yes, they are if we give them the tools and we teach them how to be. We can't just say,
yes.
well, this thing's happened, they'll bounce back because they're kids. That's not the way that it works. And this
Mhm.
isn't to, bash the people around me at the time because they did the best that they could with what they had. But
Yeah,
I don't think I was necessarily given those tools, and I wasn't given the tools before it happened.
yeah,
So that's something that I truly believe is that we should be giving people the tools before something happens so that they can actually it's easier to reach into them when they're already there than try and create something new when we're like already trying to like survive. So
absolutely.
I remember even just like clear moments, I suppose just to give context if people haven't lost a parent young,
Yeah. Mhm.
I would be, like, out with my friends, and they would be moaning about, their mums making them tidy their bedrooms, and I just felt so disconnected from
Mm,
them, but also they would sometimes stop their conversation mid-conversation if I was around because
mhm.
they didn't know what to do, and at the time, I was really hurt by it, and now I'm older and I've got the hindsight, I can see, they were just kids themselves,
Yeah,
but at the time, I was really hurt by a lot of my friends, and so a lot of my friendships changed, and so there was
yes.
some secondary losses too. It wasn't just my mum that died, it was friendships that changed. It was, the way that like, acted at school. I had teachers say some horrendous stuff to me when I was just trying to figure it out, and it's it was a challenge, but it's taught me a lot about how to treat others and also
Yeah,
to not have those expectations of other people. Like we
yeah.
can't expect other people to show up as we would.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I
I
say that all the time.
we posted something about this a while ago. I'm not sure, but about like not expecting that of other people, and it can hurt
Yeah,
us, it can upset us, but they're just doing what they can with the tools that they have too.
yeah. It's so true. I've said that many times. I think I have an episode on that. And it's awful to, like, have to say out loud, and it's, like, you kinda can't expect yourself from other people, but I've learned the hard way. You kinda just can't. You can hope for the best, I think, but, like, realistically, we are all raised differently. There are so many factors that contribute to how someone does or does not process grief, and so, yeah, it sounds so harsh, but I almost feel like the sooner we can maybe not be accepting of that, because that's, ugh,
Yeah.
God, I don't, it's like, can we hold ourselves to a higher standard, please? But as long as we can understand that, and like you said, right? Like we start to understand people differently, and we just start to understand how the world works a little bit, and that we can just, I dare I say, find some peace in that. It's like, okay, this takes a little bit of the pressure off of me to feel like I have to convince people to see my grief my way. No one's ever going to. Even if you've lost the same person, right? Your siblings, you all lost a mom, but like I would imagine you all maybe processed that very differently.
Very
It
different.
looked different, came out differently for all of you. So there's no comparing, right? And so that, yeah, it comes back to
Yeah.
that too. But
And there's so much, there's that saying that people say, like, when there's a death, it brings the family close together. But what I hear most of the time
not
is that
always.
the opposite,
Yeah.
because we have this idea that grief should look and feel a certain way based on our own like feeling of it. And
Yeah.
so, there was tension between me and my siblings and my dad because we all dealt with it differently and we were all different ages. We all had different relationships with my mom as well. For me, my mom was still very much my mom, whereas for my sister and my brother, she was a friend too because they
Mhm.
were older. So
Older.
that shift had happened. I've never experienced having a mom as a friend, and that
Mhm.
that is something that I want to give to my son, but it's something that I grieve every day when I see my adult friends having that relationship with their mum now.
Same.
I don't
Yeah.
get, yeah, you'll get it. Like, you don't get it. And that's what you want. You want them to be with your child. You want them to, meet I would love her to have met my husband. There's all of these things that come back later in life and hit you again like a wave
Mhm.
that at the same time when you're 15, you start to think about those things and you
Yeah.
think, oh my God, this is never going to happen. You start to grieve all of the things that are yet to happen, not just the
Yes.
things that have happened. So
Yeah.
it's big for a little brain, for a little
Yes.
brain to process. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And
Even
so,
for an adult brain, it's, like, so
yeah,
hard to
it
process.
is. So if my poor dad, yeah, as I say, my poor dad dealt with a lot. I was
Oh.
rather unruly after my mum died, but I've come round the other side, I think.
Yeah, you're just like, I've made up for it, right?
I think so. I like to think.
Oh my god. But the secondary losses too, just thank you for bringing that up. Again, that can be, like, a whole other conversation, but, like, it's so true. And again, we talk about this all the time with, like, this quote timeline and things, and you just hit the nail on the head perfectly. It's all of the things that we are grieving that, like, happened in the past, right? We're mourning that, we're missing them, we're mourning them just, like, not being here in our present, and then we think about all the things they're gonna miss, and that can be very overwhelming. And, like, for me, when and you can probably relate to this too, right? Like, my parents did not see me get engaged. They thankfully, they did meet my husband. At least we were, like, dating at the time, so I, like, at least they kinda got to know him, but, like, still, like, God, they're missing out on so much. But, like, didn't see me get engaged, not get married, not having my daughter, and I, like, again, you can empathize with that. And it's like all of those things before they happened were, like, things I had to kind of, like, pre-grieve or something. I don't know. I just was just like, "Okay, how am I going to navigate that?" And, it had been a little while since they passed at that point. So I don't think people probably were understanding that that process. They kind of maybe figured, like, okay, it was like at that point it was like, a couple years ago, a few years ago now that she lost her parent, I'm sure she's processed it by now. And
Yeah.
it's like, but no, because this is a new situation. This is a new milestone. And even if it's not a milestone, it's just the day-to-day stuff, right? Like seeing my in-laws with my daughter, and I am constantly having that shoved in my face. So it's like for like you especially, or anyone here listening, dealing with things like that. I mean, it's one of the reasons I wanna validate that so much, and, talk about that here on the podcast, because just, again, reminding people that they're not alone in that, and it really it seeps into so many more aspects of our life
It
than we
does.
give it credit for.
And it goes back to that whole time doesn't heal everything,
Yeah.
like, it doesn't change things because, as you say, we're in situations that we've never been in before. We're a
Right.
completely different stage of life. We're older than we were, more time has passed,
Yeah.
and it's I think, as you say, there's that pre-grieving. Maybe we can anticipate that
Yeah.
something might come up, and we're a
Yeah.
bit more aware of that, whereas maybe in those earlier days, it hit us a bit harder and a bit
Yeah.
out of nowhere. Whereas when we know there's like a big life change, like a wedding or having a baby or getting a new, even like getting a new job, like if we know that's
Yeah.
coming up,
Yeah.
we maybe anticipate it more. But then there's also are those other moments where like you can be walking in the shopping center with your kid and you see like them with their another kid with their grandparents, or like we actually had at daycare the other day grandparents day, and it was so beautiful because my in-laws were here from England, which, was not planned for that, but that was so nice they got that. But I was thinking to
Oh.
myself, this is something that he'll never get with my mum,
Mhm.
and that will
Mhm.
be beautiful too. And so I know more of that's going to come up over the years, and also that's going to come up for him. So then like I'm
Yes.
thinking, oh my god, I've got to like have these conversations with him, and then so
Yeah.
yeah, it's this constant, it's not, there's never an end point. It's just constant coming up.
Yeah. Really quick, so to kind of move into the loss of your nephew, I just want to touch on that because and kind of going through your we're into your 20s now, right? Let's just go through
Go
the
through the decade.
timeline of all of your grief. Can you talk to me a little bit about what that grieving process looked like? And again, because I'm not going to say it didn't happen directly to you. This happened directly to you, right? But in this case, you're supporting your sister. Um, and just as a parent, just unimaginable loss. So, what did that look like? Did that kind of kick in any grief from your mom's passing? Like just and again, 20 you were 21, right? When that
Yeah.
happened? Like that's also still very young. I just want to note that. So, just talk to us a little bit about that.
For me, it was just hard to see my sister. Like my sister
Mhm.
after my mum died became a very maternal figure for me.
Mhm.
And so to see her go through that pain just felt really unfair. And then to do that without my mum, and my dad, again, absolutely wonderful, but without my mum, and even like also speaking to my dad was very aware that my mum wasn't there, and there was certain
Mhm.
things that he couldn't give my sister. For me, what it really highlighted, and I've said this quite a few times to my sister too, so I don't mind sharing it, is that like the duality, because
Yeah.
and I think this is where it started to kick in for me, my processing of that grief doesn't need to look a certain way. She was obviously so in love with her babies. They came so in love, so much worry as well with them being
Mhm.
so early. But
Mhm.
then my nephew died, and then she still had my niece. So
Mhm.
she's holding both of these like deep, deep, deep grief and deep, deep, deep love all at once.
Right.
And you have people saying things to you like, at least one of them, like
Oh, yeah, I had a
insense.
feeling that was coming.
Yeah, yeah. How did you guess? And I think for me to witness that and to support her through that, I also saw, like things that I maybe said to her that then on reflection, I was like, okay, when someone said that to me, that really hurt.
Oh, we've been there, yeah.
So why am I saying it? Like, what is so ingrained in us that we feel the need to say these things?
Mhm.
So it really gave me a whole new perspective on grief. It was
Yeah.
like shoved so clearly in my face that I couldn't avoid it. And even now, like having conversations with my sister, there's so much grief there for her, and it's completely different, and it's something that I will never like
Yeah.
understand. I will never
Yeah.
understand it. I and to sit there and hear her even 9 years on talk about it, it's different, because I think sometimes when you experience grief there's this assumption that like all grief,
Oh god,
like
yes.
oh, I'm the expert, I've done it once so I can do it again. It doesn't
Oh,
work like that either. Like every single
yeah.
scenario is different, every single
Oh,
scenario
yeah.
feels different, and then again for other people it's completely different. So it
Mhm.
again, I think as well it highlighted for me as well, like, okay, I've done this once, that doesn't mean I know it all, and I need to pipe
Mhm.
down a little bit.
It's very humbling.
Yeah. So, and it gave me an appreciation for the fact that some people say the wrong thing sometimes, and it's
Yeah.
not ill intent.
It's
It's,
usually not malicious. I mean,
oh
yeah.
God, no. And so I
Yeah.
think that helped me with my processing of my own grief and the things that I went through.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, so speaking of your journey, you mentioned went through miscarriage and infertility, and I want to hold space for that because, of course, it's I was gonna, sure, on paper, right? It's different than losing a baby at 5 days old, but the principle is the same, right? There's a loss there, and it's child loss, and so can again, whatever you're comfortable sharing, just again, tell us how you have coped with that, and, like, now knowing that you have a beautiful son, which thank God, but,
Yes.
your journey to get there, I would imagine, is just perilous.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's look, in fact, I remember having a conversation with my sister just relating back to, it's different, but it's similar.
Yeah.
And she was saying to me, there was so much that we could resonate with each other and relate to in many ways, which was really comforting that she was then able to provide that support for me and yeah, could hold space for that in a way that I don't think many other people could. So, as you always do when you start wanting a baby, like you just assume it's going to happen quickly, which I mean, very rarely it does. And I don't know why
Mhm.
sex ed classes teach us that it just, whoop, it's
Yeah.
not that way. And it's just kind of like, encouraging people to have this feeling of disappointment.
Yeah.
But for us, it actually the first time it did, whoop, happen.
Us
And
too. Not to
yeah,
put that out there,
um,
but I know plenty of people that hasn't, so I wanna normalize that too, or they're on baby number 2, and baby number 2 did not come quickly, right? So
exactly. Yeah.
yes, yeah.
So it did happen, but then at about 5 weeks
Mm,
pregnant, we had the early miscarriage.
mhm.
So for that one, it was sad, but also I was kind of like, oh, a bit naive to it and a bit like, it's fine. Like, I guess I was upset, but it wasn't the same depth of pain that I felt with my like subsequent miscarriages.
Okay.
Um, I decided to tell people when we did fall pregnant because I saw that that first time I needed that support
Yeah.
and wanted that support. And so I thought, "Do you know what? There's a fear." And I think a lot of people who experience miscarriage are then fearful of telling people when they fall pregnant again.
Yep.
And I've had people ask me, should I tell people? And I say, it's completely up to you. For
Mhm.
me, I wanted that support. And
Yep.
so if something did happen, I knew I
Just in
had it.
case.
Just
Yeah. Hate to
in case.
say just in case, but no, that's so valid.
It is. And also, why should this life not be celebrated from the moment that
Yes.
you know about it, right?
So
Why
true.
should we have to wait to celebrate something so beautiful, even
Yeah.
if it ends in loss, which it did for me.
That's
So
a beautiful way to think of it.
thank you. So then yes, we had another 2 miscarriages after that. So within the space of a year, 3 miscarriages, all
Mm.
around the subsequent ones were around 8 weeks-ish.
Okay.
And it was horrible. There was a lot of grief in terms of m expectations. And
Yeah.
this is a whole new landscape that had no idea about.
Yeah.
Very different to grieving my mum, because with my mum, I had memories.
Yeah.
And with my mum, I like had this tangible human person, whereas with the pregnancies, I had all of these hopes and dreams,
Mhm.
but I didn't have memories.
Yeah.
I
Oof.
have a
Yeah.
couple of memories of like, when my husband made me mashed potato and I was like, this is disgusting. What have you put in this? Because I was starting to get morning sickness. Like I have those like funny little things, but not like
Yeah.
memories of our babies. So it
Right.
was quite a new one.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then also the grief of, just my body. Like, why is my body not doing what it's meant to do? There was a
Mhm.
lot of self-blame, and that's still something that I'm trying to fully understand. And then we went through IVF, which again is a whole new thing. And through this time, by the way, I also had friends who were announcing pregnancies and having babies, which is again, it brings you back to that duality. And there was some really good friends of mine that I had to be honest with and say, it's not that I'm unhappy for you, I'm unhappy for me. And
Yeah.
I, I, when they told me, I couldn't be like super duper happy
Mm.
because I just felt sadness for me in that moment. And then once I'd felt that, then I was able to be happy and excited for them.
Of
And
course.
at the start, I felt a lot of guilt around that. And, I
Yeah.
think all grief, we can feel this. We can feel guilt if we're feeling maybe a little bit envious of somebody else's situation because they
Mhm.
have something that we wish so deeply that we had. And that doesn't mean we want to take it away from them. It doesn't mean that we're angry at them or we have any ill intent or
It's like
it's,
nothing personal,
yeah,
but
it's just I'm
it's
sad.
personal to me. Yeah, it's like not to like put some fine point on it, but it's just like, yeah, how else do you say like, listen, it's not personal. This is like this is a me thing. I
This isn't
gotta
all,
work
it's
through
not
this.
you,
But
it's
like,
me. Like, I know it's
yeah.
cliche, but it's true. And
Yeah,
it can make you feel really, really guilty. And I had a lot of
absolutely.
guilt around that. And I don't think that's uncommon in all types of grief. I had to be
Yeah, yeah.
honest about actually how I was truly feeling inside.
Mhm.
Otherwise, I was just gonna let the guilt eat me up,
Yeah.
and it didn't feel right. And I think then I probably wouldn't have been able to process everything I was trying to
Absolutely.
work through at the time. So it was a really hard time. And even, you know, when we fell pregnant through IVF and we've had our little boy, like there's a lot of grief that goes along with that.
Oh,
There
yeah.
was this expectation of what it would be like to be a mum, which
Yes,
is
let's get into this, please. That's where I was gonna go with this next, and I would love to hear what
it
you
is it is not what, Instagram makes it out to be, that's for sure.
it never is.
It is the best, hardest job
Mhm.
that I've ever done.
Yeah.
And it's a whole new human when they arrive, and this human you need to get to know, and therefore it
Mhm.
doesn't mean that always the relationship is just like an instant connection.
Yes.
And for me that was true. I didn't have an instant connection, and that was
Mhm.
really, really hard. And I've not even began to look at that element of grief in terms of grieving the first year that I thought I would have with my son once he was here,
Mhm.
because it didn't look anything like I wish it looked or would have liked it to look or hoped it would look. I really struggled with that connection, as I say. I didn't have my mum to ask these things. So although my dad flew out to Australia to come and help us, it's not the same.
No. Nope.
My dad did not see the dishes on the side that needed cleaning. He did
They
not have,
never do.
like, those things in the early days you need,
Yeah.
and often I saw my friends, like, their mums were doing that for them. I
Yeah.
did not have that, and that, when compounded with hormones, is
It's a
and
recipe
it's yeah,
for
it's
just
crazy time. So
oh,
there's been a lot of grief for me over this last year that I don't really understand yet,
yeah.
um, but I think it just goes to show that it doesn't matter what happens before, like, expectations often don't match reality,
Mhm.
and grief can just sneak on in there.
Exacerbate that too and just yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Can I just say too, thank you for calling out not having a connection with your
Mm,
son initially. I wanna just highlight that really quick because not naming names, not that anybody would know who this person is, but one of my very, very dear friends, she also did not have that initial connection with her baby. She was really struggling with that. And I think now she understands that it was probably some postpartum depression happening also. Like, I think she was thinking it's like postpartum blues. One nurse actually told me I did not experience that, but I had been talking to one about something. I can't remember this now, but and I don't want to okay, I'm like so not a medical professional here, so I don't want to misquote anything. But I think she had said something like if it's past and this is all very medical and very technical, so like this
yeah,
whole if it's past 2 weeks, it's considered this. It's like okay, eye roll. But she said something to that effect where it's like if it's after 2 weeks, like then it's categorized, I guess, as postpartum depression or something like that.
mhm,
And I just wanna normalize that because first of all, postpartum depression in general, like, hi, let's normalize that for sure. But that connection also, we are so sleep deprived as women. We are getting used to breastfeeding and recovering from either a major surgery, which is what I
yeah,
had an emergency C-section, so I was, like, going through that.
a lot.
But regardless, birth is birth, hi. It's tiring, it's exhausting, our body is never the same,
Yeah.
and so we're grieving that. We're getting to know this little human being and what they want and need and their little quirks and all the things, and the first year is wild because just more and more personality keeps coming out and all the things, and we're at, like she our daughter's gonna be 2 in January of 2026, so we're a few months before that right now, and just trying to understand her communication, right? Like, she has some words, but she's not talking yet, and so we are just, like, banging our head against a wall half the time of, like, "What is wrong?" Like, just tell us, for the love of God.
Use your
So
words that you don't have yet. Use them.
right, exactly. Tell us what's going on, even though we know you can't tell us what's going on. But it's so funny because we'll talk to other parents too, and it's the way like, so many people joke, like, it doesn't really get easier per se, it's just as chaotic or there's just as many things where you're confused or, angry or whatever with that.
Yeah.
It just evolves. It just comes up in different ways, and I was like, "Ah, okay, so this is what parenthood is." So it is so magical, and it's the most incredible thing, but it's also all the things that you mentioned and more, and especially as women, and the going back to work part, if that's
Yeah.
relevant for any of us here, and, like, just and the hormones, which you also mentioned as well, and how long it can take to even begin to feel like ourselves again, the brain chemistry of our brain also I don't think ever the same
No.
from things I've read and heard. Again, I'm a medical professional, so I know these things, right? And I see more and more women talking about it, which I appreciate, and, like, I think there is more of that coming out on, like, social media, like, I'm seeing it, but I still feel like it needs to be talked about more, normalized more. Our partners need to understand that better because I've also had friends that have, generally speaking, very wonderful husbands, but don't understand how long that postpartum can last and that it is more than just, 6 months or whatever the sort of, again, science-y definition is, and it's like, there's so much. There's
I
so
think
much
there's
we're
so much
coping with.
and there's so much grief, and I think it needs to be
Yes.
named because
Yes.
this is where people feel, like, isolated or invalidated because we're
Mhm.
not naming it for what it is. Like, we're grieving
Yeah.
the person that we were before because we were a person before and we're a person after. Like,
Yep.
there's is it matrescence or my I'm not good, but there's a word called
Yeah.
matrescence, I think, and it basically encompasses what this is the
Okay.
you before, the you after, and there's a grieving process. Like, I'm grieving some of the freedom and the autonomy that I
Oh,
had before
yes.
my son
Yeah.
arrived because
Same.
I love what I do and I don't get to do it a lot because
Mhm.
I've got a human that
Yep.
relies on it. And, it is different for my husband who is the primary worker in our household. So he goes off to
Yeah.
work. And so there's also a bit of, you know, tension there. And it does remind me so much of grief just through loss of a parent or something, because again, there's that tension there. There's the
Mhm.
disagreements, there's the misunderstandings. We all have our own interpretation. And what you said about it being different at every stage, it's just like grief, right? It evolves. It's
Mhm.
still there. It's still hard, but it's different.
Mhm.
And I'm really, it's, this is going to sound really weird to say. It's nice to experience a form of grief that doesn't have death involved, but,
Yes.
but
So valid.
it's completely new territory to
Yeah, it
me.
is.
And
Yeah.
in some ways, as I say, because it isn't that tangible thing, like, oh, somebody was here, now they're not here,
Yeah.
I'm finding it quite hard to, like, figure out my way through it and to, like, find a way alongside it in
Yeah.
the same ways as I did with, like, a death.
That makes so I empathize with that so much, and we just can feel like we just, like, lose ourselves, really, within it all, and then it's like, eventually, again, no real timeline here, but, like, you kinda come out of the fog, whenever you come out of the fog, more or less, and I'm like, "Okay, who am I? What's my purpose now?" Like, that's also been kind of my thing. It's like, okay, I feel very called to be a mom, but, like, that's not all of me. And I have this podcast and other projects, other things I want to do that I want to make time for. I want to work out and move my body and whatever. And, so I'm like trying to figure out, okay, how do I fit me
Yeah.
again into this little life? And how do we commingle and co-create and all kind of hold space for each other? How does my husband still, want to have his hobbies and his things? And it's ever evolving. And, so for us, like communication portion of this has been very critical, but it also just it tests partnerships, marriages, whatever, whatever anyone's respective like relationship is. And that's a whole nother thing too, right? There's whether we want to name it as grief, but I would say some grief, right? Like there's your relationship changes too
Yeah.
after and during, and for us, because of the nature of the very traumatic birth we had, like there were parts of my husband that I had never seen before,
Yeah.
and probably vice versa too, but like he had really been, like, I'm not joking, he has been through nothing traumatic until
Yeah.
our daughter's birth.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna say this like lightly, but I don't mean this lightly. It messed him up. We've
Yeah.
talked about it on the podcast here before too, and it really did. And it took him a long time to cope with that and understand that. And I think there's still aspects of that grief that he is working
Mm.
through. And it's like, because according to him, like we're not out of the woods yet, even though she's doing beautiful and she's thriving. So it's just, you know, and then how do you hold space for your partner? Like there's again, just with like the death of a person, like there's just so many ways that losses, whatever they look like for us, can just, seep into every aspect of our life.
Does. And having experienced, I think when you've experienced loss and grief before another thing happens, like you were
Yeah.
saying, like the communication is such an important part, and I think grief does teach us that. Um,
Yeah.
and it teaches us a way of being able to communicate where we're so aware of the other person as well and how they're going to perceive and receive what we say because we've been on the flip side. So it gives us this
Mhm.
unique perspective. But in the same breath, I find myself sometimes being like, okay, I know I talk about this stuff all the time, but I don't want to be the person that knows this stuff.
Yeah.
I just want somebody to actually tell me what to do.
Right.
I don't want to be the one that's like dishing it out. I want vice versa. I just want to be looked after. I just want to be
Mhm.
bothered. I want to be cared for.
That's
And
right.
even if you've got like the logical, you can have the logical knowing, but still be illogical. And I think you need to leave space for that, like
Yeah.
for that to be able to experience both. Quite often I like get stuck in this like, I know this is what it's meant to be. I know it should be like this. This is how I know, like I'll move through it, I'll process it, I'll navigate it. I actually just need to sometimes leave space to like feel it. Like
Just be. Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
like it doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't have to
Right.
have, like the tips and the tricks and all of that. It can just
Yes.
be what it is, and that's
Yeah.
all right. And then when you're ready, you can lean back into, the stuff that works for you, but it doesn't always
Definitely.
have to be go, go, go.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing point. One thing I want to touch on as we slowly start to wrap up is something else that because kind of again talking about, I don't even want to call this a secondary loss. This
Mm.
is definitely a big part of your life and your story is you were diagnosed, I think you said, with ADHD at 29 and chronic illness at
You
31. So
tell?
again, just whatever you want to share. But I just want to, I would be remiss if I didn't touch on that, because one thing I also just randomly want to call out is I've been hearing of so many more people being diagnosed with ADHD in like later years. So I
Yeah,
find that very interesting. But also just what that journey has been like for you. And remind me, was that before, during, or after welcoming your son?
that was before.
Okay.
So
Gotcha. Okay. So
it was
we're going a
during.
little out of
Yeah, we're
timeline here.
going like here, there, and everywhere, which is typical ADHD fashion. So I found out I was diagnosed with ADHD in the midst of trying to conceive. So
Okay.
it
Oh
was.
gosh, as if you don't have enough going on.
I just like to add more in the mix. It keeps it
Keeps it
interesting.
spicy. Yeah.
So it was actually a friend of mine who recommended, she's a clinical psychologist, she has ADHD, and she recommended that I speak to somebody and see if I get assessed. For me, for a long time, I thought ADHD was like, the high energy, the disruptive kind of behavior. A lot of my ADHD is more internal. So my thoughts, the way that I talk to myself, the way I
Mhm.
am organized, etc. So it's all my own little world as
Gotcha.
opposed to externally. It was interesting because a lot of the stuff that we spoke about in regards to my ADHD also then, like, impacted my grief and the way I process
Mm,
grief. I noticed it more so with the infertility and the miscarriage. The the way that I responded and the behaviors I was engaging in,
mhm,
to try and understand what was going on was very related to, like, my ADHD symptoms. So I was very, like,
right.
obsessive. I couldn't focus. I couldn't like, sit still.
Mm,
I was basically just, like, hours Googling, think of anything else, and if I tried to sit down and do another project, I just couldn't.
mhm.
And so, it probably impacted me a lot when I was a teenager too, but I don't really remember how or why or what, because I
Okay.
wasn't aware of it at the time. But definitely now I see how I can fall very easily, which is probably relates to the postnatal depression as well. I fall very
Mhm.
easily into those feelings, and the hard feelings that I experience, it can be hard to shift the focus away.
Right.
So there's some of my life that I think, again, the psychiatrist referred to it as like a grieving process as well, because there's so much of your life that you've gone through thinking that you're just different to everybody else, and like, why can't I do
Mhm.
this the same as everyone else?
Yeah.
And then you find out actually it's just that your brain's wired a little bit differently.
Mhm.
So you're grieving like all of these things that could have happened, may have happened, the way you spoke to yourself, the things you started, stopped, everything. And
Oof.
then you get to your diagnosis, and then, yeah, again, you're like learning about yourself.
Yeah, it's that kind of version that you were and the version that you are now. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
I like again, it's not maybe a traditional death as in you're losing somebody, but there's a reckoning. There's like a whole processing of like, oh my, what, like that's a lot. And especially if it was slightly later in life, like it's a lot. That's many years to have to like sort
Yeah.
of like, okay, like let me work through that. Like that takes time and
And had I
if
known it,
you
10 years ago, a decade prior, when I was, in my early 20s, like,
yeah.
it gets you reflecting on these what ifs, which I don't think in many ways is very healthy to
Yeah.
thinking about the what ifs all the time. Um,
Ruminating on that, yeah.
you fall into that, like, you fall into that, and so it's a whole process together, and if you get a good psychiatrist and a good psychologist, then they help you sort of navigate that as well. But it's it's interesting, and a lot of my friends have been actually diagnosed late around in life, and I think it comes with the fact that they just have more awareness for how it presents in women, because
Sure,
it does
yeah.
present differently. Often it is similar to mine, like it's more like internal rather than
Okay.
external, but it 100% has an impact on grief. I'm not an expert on it. My friend does a lot around grief and neurodiversity, and I find it really interesting.
That
And
is
so
so
even
interesting.
things like, comfort. Some people who are neurodiverse don't want to be touched. They don't want to,
Yeah, sure.
or it could be, sensory issues, like you're going to a funeral, there's a lot of noise, a lot of music, and then there's
Mm,
sensory issues there. There's all sorts of ways that neurodiversity feeds into grief, but I'll leave
yeah.
that for you to speak to a different person on the podcast about.
Just like you can bring an expert on for that. No, that just thank you so much for bringing that up and like, sharing, of course, some of your journey. But as it relates to grief, I think that is so interesting and so good for all of us to be aware of, both within ourselves, right? If we, depending on how we're grieving, or if we maybe I'm trying not trying to diagnose anyone here listening, but, like, perhaps if they can see some of themselves in you with certain things, like, who knows, could be something to explore. But again, it's keeping in mind what other people are going through in grief too, and whether it is diagnosed or not, and just such a testament to how we all grieve differently and how it can show up for all of us, neurodiverse or not. And so just no one's ever really brought that up on the podcast before, actually. So thank
There
you.
we
That is a
go.
first. Yeah, surprisingly, like maybe here and there, but not in such like, a poignant way. So I appreciate you calling that out.
Well, you're welcome, and hopefully you can speak to somebody who knows a bit more about it than
If you know anybody, let me know.
I do.
Well, it sounds like you have a friend, so maybe we'll have to
There
talk.
you go.
But as we wrap this up, one thing I like to sometimes have guests, leave listeners with are, what has been helpful for you. So obviously you've been through a lot. And I'm sure there's been many different ways and things that you have perhaps tried, either tried and succeeded or tried and failed in terms of coping. And I like to sometimes ask just what has been helpful for you. It sounds like you've maybe done some therapy or you've spoken with someone, so I imagine that has been helpful, but is either give us a little, insight on that and how it's been helpful for you or anything else that, maybe someone here listening could take away with them today.
Mm, talking. It's exactly what you said.
It's
Talk.
so cathartic. It's so good.
It's been the best, and that's not necessarily always with a professional. Like, I have
Yeah.
spoken to professionals. The very early days, it was more that my dad sent me, and I didn't actually talk, and I didn't really do much because it wasn't something I felt comfortable with. But
Yeah.
talking in later years, a professional has been helpful, but also just talking to seeking out people who get it, and not
Mhm.
but also not being angry if they don't. So I've got friends
Yes.
who are wonderful friends, but I will probably never speak to them in depth about my grief because they just cannot relate in the same way that other people can. Everybody has their own skill set, right? And, some of my friends I'll go to because I want a laugh and a distraction, and other friends
Yeah.
I'll go to because I want to have a sit down cuppa and a cry.
Yep.
And finding who fits into what category has been really helpful for me. But
Mhm.
yeah, that open communication, which is the whole reason I do the work that I do, is because I just want to talk about it. I think
Yeah.
that if we give a voice to it, we find other people with similar experiences, which reflects it back to us, and we think, okay, we're not alone, we're not, broken, there's nothing wrong with us.
Yeah.
And if we can, sometimes we just need to hear somebody else say it in a different way to what we're thinking it for it to click.
Yeah.
And the only
Mhm.
way we're going to do that is if we have conversations. And there's so many different ways now. I do hear a lot of people say, well, none of my friends get it. There's nobody around me. I don't have a support system. And I hear you, because we don't have any of our family in Australia.
Mhm.
And that in itself can be quite tricky. There's online communities, right? Like, me and you are in completely different countries and we're talking right now. And there's so
Yep.
many beautiful online communities right now that aren't wallowing, that are
Yeah.
really showing that it's possible to live alongside loss.
Yes.
Get involved in those communities. Like, people in those spaces, like me and you, we want to talk, and we're always open to talk. So if you feel
Mhm.
like you haven't got anybody in your direct network, like, reach out to those, because yeah, the talking part, that is my key, is talking about it. Some people won't
Same.
receive it well. Some people, like, the moment I say what I do, or I just even open up about grief, they're like, ooh, like,
Yeah.
that's their own stuff being reflected back at them, and they can't,
Mhm.
come running and they'll come asking me. For now, they do them, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But I just say it, and I know that's not easy for everybody. It could
No.
like writing down, right? Because that's still work.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be conventional talking. It could be like, yeah, writing.
Yeah, or starting there, and that's why, the beauty of there's a lot of great things about technology and a lot of questionable things about
Right.
technology, but, there's not like, I think with the typical, like, grief groups or something, you don't have to go in person if you don't want to, like, sometimes I encourage that or, like, showing up on a Zoom with your camera on and all the things and really engaging, but if you just need to kinda, like, sit there and, like, hide a little bit until you get more comfortable, like, do that, right? Baby steps to kinda get us comfortable and all of that with it. Because like, I wasn't super comfortable either, and now I can't shut up about my parents or my grief or anything I've been through, and it has been the most healing thing. And it's finding a community, it's finding people like you. I too have a wonderful support system and great people around me, but they are not always very validating
Yeah.
or they can't hold the depth of it, frankly, or it's a lot of the silver lining stuff and what and so I know who to go to for what. I'm very much like you, and I'm just like, you learn over the years. Unfortunately, it is trial and error, by fire sometimes.
It is.
Sometimes you get burned, but you learn, and it is just all part of this wonderfully messy process. But it is so beautiful. And what you offer, I want to finish up with you just telling us a little bit about Grief Talks because again, it's how I found you in the first place. So can you just tell us a little bit about your work and what Grief Talks offers and because you really touch on like all types of grief there more or less, right?
Yeah, so we focus on all forms of grief rather than
Mhm.
just death. So we do a lot of workshops in community groups, schools, and workplaces. I absolutely love the school sessions. We go in and we speak to parents, carers, teachers, and then sometimes the kids as well, which I love because kids are just so honest and blunt and they just say it as it
I
is.
love this.
And it's honestly the best. They come out with the most hilarious things
That's
sometimes.
amazing.
You can see like the adults around them like, oh my God, no, they shouldn't have said that. And I'm like, no, say
Yeah.
it. So we provide that this next year. As I say, I'm coming back off mat leave, so we've had a bit of a
Mhm.
break, but my focus really is going to be on that community and building that sense of community and community groups. I want people to know that it doesn't matter what type of grief they've experienced, that you can't compare grief to grief, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's all valid, and we've all got our own experiences. So
Mhm.
want people to know that, and I want people to be able to name that. So that's what we do. Some fun reels on Instagram sometimes
Yes.
if I have the energy to do it.
I
But
so feel
yeah,
that.
we've been a bit quiet over the last year with mat leave, but I'm back, so there's
Yeah.
going to be some exciting things coming out over the next year.
Exciting. Well, this is perfect timing that we're having this conversation. I am so grateful to you. Thank you so much for sharing your whole journey. Again, we're probably just scratched the surface with so much of it, but just giving us a little glimpse into that, just all of the wonderful, again, guidance, things to keep in mind. Like I just so many things that you have named today are things that I just shout from the rooftops and want to continue hammering home to people because you just can't hear it enough and, just creating a more grief literate society in any country. Mind you, we're on two completely different continents
Yes.
and here we are both having the same problem with both of our countries. So here we go. And but it's incredible. And where can people connect with you if they want to work with you, maybe do a grief group, what have you, or just follow you on Instagram and see all the fun things you do?
Yeah, mainly Instagram, to be honest. So
Yeah.
Grief
Okay.
Walks on Instagram. That's where I hang out most of the time. And then we've got a website, but you can find it all through Grief Talks on
Perfect.
Instagram. But yeah, I hope I'm reflecting back, and I don't know if I gave many tips, but I hope that I just allowed people to hear maybe something of their own experience in what I shared, so they know that they're not the only one.
Yeah, no, it's super validating. And yeah, even if it's not like, okay, here's what you do, X, Y, and Z. Like again, these are conversations and these topics, these things where it's like those were the things that were, even if it didn't resonate with me so early in my grief, or it was a little hard to hear, or I was kind of like, oh, like wincing a little bit. I y I needed to hear those things, and I think the more that we do, we, like, kinda start to believe them, and it's like, "Okay, here are 2 people that have kind of they've been through some stuff," and I don't, again, like to say, like, we're on the other side of it per se, because it just sounds so black and white, but,
Yes.
like, can just speak from a little bit of experience and people who are educated a little bit more in grief to hopefully just, like, instill a little hope if if nothing else.
Yeah, you can
Um,
sit and talk and laugh about grief, like
yeah, look at us, like
possible. So,
yeah.
but I hopefully, I'm sure people who listen to your podcast already see that, and that
Hopefully.
little bit of hope of seeing that it's possible to live alongside it and not be consumed by
Yes.
it is sometimes just what you need just to get
Yeah.
through the next day. One last thing, sorry. I
Of course.
remember my dad saying to me not long after my mum died, I was, really in the pits, and he said to me, it's about the 1%. He was like, so if
Mhm.
all you can do today is get up and have a shower, that's still something that you've done, and that's still an achievement. If that,
Yes.
that's still one thing. If all you do today is get up and actually just get out of your pajamas, you don't even shower, but you get changed, that's still a tick. And so
Yeah.
it's breaking it back down into like those small things. Sometimes we think it has to be this like big thing, like, oh, I have to look put together, go out with my friends, go to work, and then I'm okay. Small things like the
Yeah.
the little achievement that you do, it's still an achievement.
Absolutely. Those little micro moments, I kind
Yeah.
of like to call them. I have literally like a little mini program about that because it really they're so small. It's so micro. It's so like in the moment, okay, I feel like I'm just barely surviving, getting by. No, you are doing so much more than you think. Again, I've been really on this like rant about choices lately. Like it's all about choices in life, which is like, hi, that's
It
not new.
is.
But like, but it is. And we underestimate how impactful those small choices are. in grief. I'm seeing more like reels and TikToks about this too, where it's like a side by side of like your choices in the morning, right? Whether you stay on your phone and scroll or you get up and you go for a walk or something. And
Yes.
it's like how it affects the rest of your day. I'm like, let's not underestimate how powerful that is. It's so true.
It
Like,
is, and it's not a
yeah,
big thing. It's a
right.
small that like like seemingly insignificant, but it is so significant to
Yes.
your day and also to your grief and to how you're going to feel in yourself. And to look back and think, oh my God, you know, last week I couldn't get out of bed. This
Yeah.
week I got changed. Like,
Yeah.
wow, that's
Look how far
incredible.
you've come.
Yeah,
But like, seriously.
it's such a big step and it feels
Yeah.
so small in the moment. And to other people, who cares what they think? To them, it might
Yeah.
look small, but for you, that is a big thing. And we
Yeah.
need to remember that when we're grieving, because our body is
Mm.
just like taken over completely and it's
Yep.
just trying to survive. It's in survival mode. So those small things that we do, like they mean a lot.
Yes. It is a matter of survival, seriously. And that is so heavy. We can physically feel heavy, but it's like, it's all we can do. It's all we can do sometimes. So yeah, we cannot underestimate that. Thank you. That was like, wow, what a powerful way to end. Thank your dad too, I guess. But great, great words of wisdom. Katrina, thank you so much. I really appreciate this conversation.
Thank you. I've loved it. I've loved it. I could talk for ages. So
I
we'll
know, we totally could. We pretty much say that with every guest. I'm just like, we could be here for 3 more hours, but no, this is beautiful. Thank you. I am sending you a huge thank you for tuning into today's episode, my friend. Visit lossesbecomegains.com for my blog, more coping tools, ways to work with me, and so much more. And be sure you're following along on Instagram and Facebook at Losses Become Gains, and on Instagram and TikTok at Life with Grief Podcast. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and share this episode or this podcast with someone who could use it too. I'll catch you in the next episode.